As we come to the close of another spooky season, I started getting all sad thinking about all those horror novels I wasn't able to get to. Yet. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back for one last hurrah for spooky season of 2024. Now, in case you don't know, I am putting in some more horror books during the year now. I don't save everything for just October anymore like I used to, and it's helped me find a lot of new horror authors this year. But I started looking back, maybe some of the things that didn't quite make the cut earlier, and just some things that I want to read next, I guess you would say. So I started looking at some of these things and saying, these are the books, if I was picking 10 that I was going to read, like my next 10, these would be it. Now, I want to say these aren't in permanent ink or anything. These aren't ranked or nothing like that. I'm not going to pretend that, something new won't come out and knock these further down the list, something like that. But as of right now, these are probably, if you say I'm setting my queue for the next 10 horror novels I'm going to read, these would be it. So again, these aren't any particular order, so don't stress too much, except for that first book. The first one I'm going to mention, I actually do have plans for it here for the end of the year. This is going to be Lost Man's Lane by Scott Carson. Now, all I know about this one, supernatural, coming-of-age mystery, and has gotten recommended by many a Stephen King fan. So you give me coming-of-age under supernatural stress, that's always something that I think is very, very much in my sweet spot growing up as a Stephen King fan. So this one, I really don't know a ton about it. I've just had it recommended a lot from constant readers and some people who were like, actually, basically they said if you took William Kent Kruger and crossed him with Stephen King, that was the comparison I got made. I said, well, that sounds great, or whatever. So Lost Man's Lane will be the last one I think I get on the books for this year. So before the end of the year, I do have this one planned to read. I actually did get it on digital recently, and I'm very much looking forward to it because I've heard nothing but just glowing reviews for it. So with these, I'm not going to tell you too much about these guys because I don't know very much. I don't want to, spoil myself on them. So I'm going to put the links down below for every one of these because I get a lot of people saying, like, why don't you put the name of the book up for the whole time you talk about it? It's just one of those things, guys. So I got links to all these down below. You're looking for them. Next up, guys, I want to read more Ronald Malfi because I read Come With Me this year, and I liked it a lot, so I want to read more of his books. And the next one up is going to be Black Mouth. I'm going to stick with the Stephen King comparisons here because Ronald Malfi is another one that comes up a ton in my Stephen King recommendations, and everyone knows by now that my favorite Stephen King book is It. And they said that Black Mouth is very much his hat tip to It. Some people say it's him ripping off It. Other people say it's his hat tip to It. Very much like what was that one called? Summer of Night by Dan Simmons. It didn't quite click for me. And a lot of people have said, okay, well, I think maybe Black Mouth might be what you're looking for. And that's what kind of got Ronald Malfi on my radar. But I just did Come With Me first because I did own it. I have gotten Black Mouth on digital, and I'll be reading that one early next year, most likely. One that's come up kind of recently, and I hadn't really ever heard of it. I was kind of a guest over on Fantasy Files podcast. I was talking to Spencer, and one that he brought up that he thought that I would like is called Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell. Now, I don't know, okay, I've never heard of it. Looked it up a little bit. It sounds like, you're kind of locked in a cabin, and you're trying to keep out these evil things from getting you within. So I like a good trapped in the middle of nowhere, and there's some spooky monsters trying to get you. That's an easy sell for me. Not very, very hard on that one. But since Spencer brought this up, I've had a ton of recommendations for it. Now, I don't know if this is accurate, but what I heard was this was a competition that Reddit had for like an independent story, and this was the winner. And so it's kind of taken on a life of its own and gotten grown in popularity over time here. So that's very, very exciting. That sounds like you really get the because if you can make it through the hellscape that is Reddit and get those people's respect, I think that you're doing a great, great job as a writer. But I'm excited because I like to give some attention to some things that, self-pub is something that's really grown on me a lot over the course of the last year plus. And if I can keep putting a spotlight on some of those authors, I will happily do my part for that. But it sounds very exciting. It kind of almost sounds like if you were looking at like The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. I don't know. That's just kind of what I got out of the synopsis, and The Thing is my favorite horror movie of all time. So again, you're going to add in a little paranoia in there, and I think that makes the horror all that more land at this age. Next up, I talked to Ollie over at Criminale recently, and a book that he brought up and a lot of people brought up, and it's one that I've actually had on my radar for years now, since I started this channel, but I always just get so many divisive comments on it. But I think Ollie pushed me in the right direction because Ollie and I seem to agree for most part, I think, on a lot of the horror books we've read. I'm talking about The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I have not seen a book so much where one person I'll talk to them, they'll say it is amazing. And the next person I talk to, like, I DNF'd after 40 pages, it was terrible, you know? So I don't really know where I'm going to land on this. So I know it's like childhood friends. Again, that seems to be a theme now. Childhood friends getting back together at a much later age and being hunted by some sort of evil entity. So I don't know very much about it outside of that. With all the debates I've heard about this book, the only thing I can think is maybe it has some sort of twist, you know, some kind of M. Night Shyamalan kind of twist to it. That's the only thing that really kind of garners that kind of visceral debate one way or the other about a book like this. So I have no idea which way it's going to go, but I do think that Ollie finally convinced me, you know what? It just sounds like one you're just going to have to make up your own mind on and just go ahead and give it a try. And that's an author that comes up a ton for me. This or My Heart is a Chainsaw, one of the others, but I do own The Only Good Indian, so that'll be the one that I picked. You guys don't know, I read Blackwater earlier this year by Michael McDowell, and I thought it was amazing. As of right now, October of 2024, I'm still going back and forth between this and Shogun for my book of the year. It really is that good. And I said, I will read more Michael McDowell. And I have settled on The Elementals. That's the one that gets recommended to me the most. Supposed to be like a haunted house family drama, kind of a tribute in some regards to House of Haunted Hill by Shirley Jackson, one of the greatest horror books of all time. And that sounds great, because I feel like what I loved about Blackwater wasn't the big scary monsters. It was the family drama. That was the stuff that I loved. I called it the Real Housewives of Perdido in some cases. But with this, I mean, the way the guy writes family is just so compelling. And you're going to add some frights behind that. I can't think of anyone that right now I would pick to say I think that they could do it better. And I've only read Blackwater, so we'll see how this goes. But if it's anywhere even close to Blackwater, it sounds like a can't miss for me. And I do love, like I said, some good family drama when you're locked inside, maybe some kind of haunted house or something like that. Again, that always makes me go back to Shirley Jackson, one of the goats of the horror genre. I started reading Nick Cutter a couple years ago. I loved The Troop. I thought The Troop was fantastic. I thought Little Heaven it wasn't quite what I expected, but I ended up liking it quite a bit. I just wanted like a full-on like Western, ancient Western, not ancient, but like 1800s kind of gunslinger, Wild West. I wanted that with like horror into it, but that wasn't quite what it was. But what we got, I liked. I liked a lot. And I think even more so than The Troop, I felt like he wrote the characters really, really great in Little Heaven. And so at this point, it's like, well, I've got to go on to the deep, right? Because nothing scares me more, guys, than spiders and the ocean. I am terrified of the ocean. It's a real thing. It's called thalassophobia. Look it up. Really, I think it's just the fear of open space much more than like sharks or octopus, although those are scary too, you know, but maybe it's because I read so much Lovecraft when I was younger that I'm just not interested in things coming out of the ocean. I'm not interested even more so than myself being in the ocean. And with this story, I think there's some kind of global plague or something like that, and they find out that the cure, a possible cure for it, is somewhere down in the Mariana Trench. So I get a lot of Sphere vibes, Michael Crichton's Sphere, which is an incredible book. And if it's anything like that, because I think that the Sphere is a low-key horror novel by Michael Crichton. It really is. Has amazing ideas like he always did. But it was very scary in some regards. And with me, again, you're messing with the ocean, I'm already terrified. So I feel like and nothing's going to make you feel a little more claustrophobic than being in this base or something like that. The very, very bottom of the Mariana Trench, that sounds very, very scary to me. So that's a long way down, guys. It's a long, long way down. But I meant to get to the deep this year. It just kind of kept getting pushed down the list. But I want to make sure 2025 is the year that book is going to happen. I hear you guys. Where are all the ladies at? I did say I wanted to get some new ladies of horror in my life. Since my vampire queen, Anne Rice, passed away, I've been kind of looking for a female voice in the horror genre to kind of lead the way forward. And when I say that, I don't mean I need someone that writes like Anne Rice. I'm just saying she was always a standby for me. And I feel like I've been kind of lacking that. And so I picked a T. Kingfisher earlier this year, and I read The Hollow Places. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it enough to keep going. And that's why I've decided, based off your feedback, to try the Twisted Ones next. I think the Twisted Ones sounds like the one that is going to be the most interesting to me. Southern Gothic is always a home run for me. I love like Robert McCammon doing it. Obviously, I just mentioned Michael McDowell, Blackwater. Southern Gothic is something that if you do it just right, man, it is just right in the sweet spot. As someone who grew up in the southern part of the United States, uncovering dark secrets when clearing out a deceased one's home is kind of the gist I've gotten of this one. So I'm sure there's going to be some kind of creepy crawlies, or it could just be, hey, your family members were really, really messed up. That's always quite possible, and that's quite scary as well. obviously when you think you know someone and someone that you trusted and you find out some very, very scary things about them, I think that could be a different type of horror. But I'm anxious to see how I land on this one because, like I said, T. Kingfisher, I thought that she set the stage really well. She always kind of dulled the scares with humor, and I hate that. That's very MCU. I don't want that. It's fine in a comic book movie. I don't want it in a horror show. I don't want my scares to be dulled by humor. So I'm hoping that was just a one-off, and I think maybe she'll do something different with this one. But again, I liked her book enough to give her another try, and I'm hoping the Twisted Ones is a little more of what I'm looking for, because I thought Hollow Places was a good start, but it wasn't the grand slam really that I was hoping for. Another one of the ladies here, I'm going to try Ania Alborn. I hope I'm saying that right, Anaya. This book's called Brother, and Brother has been one I've been hearing about for a couple years now. And it's been on my list for a bit, but I'm going to go ahead and try to make it happen in 2025. It's kind of trying to break free from family that has some, let's just say some effed up values, maybe in tradition. So that can mean a great range of things. If it's something that's really messed up, I don't know, just kind of reading the description, I get a little bit of apt pupil maybe off of this, and that's some scary stuff, I think. So I don't know if that's kind of even close. Again, when you read like 1 or 2 sentence summaries for something like that, it always makes you go back to what you know. And obviously with me, with all things, I'm going to go back to Stephen King, obviously. But again, this one, I don't really have a lot of feedback outside of I've heard about this book a ton, and I have had it on the list. I did get it on digital, and so I said, yeah, that's going to be one I think that would definitely make the list in 2025. I've read 2 Grady Hendrix books. One was a grand slam. Another one, good, but I thought he kind of lingered on some things that I didn't like so much. But I still think Grady Hendrix might be one of my favorite modern horror authors up to this point. Now, I've only read 2 books, so it's really early to say that. But I feel like both of them have been either amazing or good enough for me to say I'm going to read more by this guy. I think it's going to be one of those authors where I end up reading everything that he's written. And next up on this list, guys, I am a huge fan of 80s slashers movies. And one of the things that really kind of came to prominence during that time was The Final Girl. So he's doing his tribute to that with the Final Girl support group. That sounds like a book that might be kind of my thing. Now, I think I'll go into this with a different expectation than I did with the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I went into that kind of expecting the fun kind of humor almost, because I felt like My Best Friend's Exorcism, it hit on all those big moments, those emotionally powerful moments, but it was a fun book. You were having fun the whole time because it was 80s nostalgia. You are going to have fun with things like that. So I guess I kind of went into it almost expecting like a little bit more fun, and Southern Book Club's Guide was very much a very serious book. It was very serious. And so I'm thinking maybe now it might just be the way that he names his books, just might be him having fun, but his books are going to have serious content, because this sounds like it has some serious themes and messages in it. It's about a real-life final girl. She survived like this big crazy massacre. She's a lone survivor, and so she creates a support group for other people, survivors that have had this kind of thing has happened to. And that sounds like a great wholesome story, right? Well, apparently someone who is not the best of quality finds out about this little group and decides he's going to start taking out some of these final girls. So again, that's okay. It could go either way. This could be, the fun romp that I'm thinking of, or it could be something very serious. I don't know. We'll see. I think that this feels kind of like the rubber match. If you don't know baseball terms, the rubber match means, you've got a 3-game series and you've split the first 2, and this decides who takes the best 2 out of 3 here. Because again, I'd say Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, liked it, just didn't love it like I was hoping to, whereas Best Friend's Exorcism was one of the best books I read last year. So I'm hoping this one kind of falls with the former, not the latter. But again, if it's like the latter, I definitely think that's good enough. I just don't know if I'd go as far as say he's one of my favorite modern horror authors right now. So I feel like it'll go a long way to deciding how fast I read more of Grady Hendrix's work. And last, but definitely not least, guys, I am also split on my offering so far of Adam Neville. Now, I've got a bonus here, because I discovered Adam Neville when I watched The Ritual on Netflix, and it said story by Adam Neville. Okay, well, let's check this author out afterwards, because I loved The Ritual. I thought it was a great movie. And the more and more I started digging on him, a lot of people say he's very much like the Stephen King of the UK right now. The guy is very popular, and he has that kind of following. You get a lot of recommendations for him from Stephen King fans. Again, I hate to bring that up so much, guys, but I do so much Stephen King content in the channel that's a lot of the comments I get is from constant readers, and they're telling me things that they think that me, a Stephen King devotee, will like. And Adam Neville, the first offering I tried last days did not click with me, but I just did All the Fiends of Hell, and I loved it. I thought it was spectacular. So what's up next with this one? This is going to be No One Gets Out Alive. This was actually the one that I was planning to do for spooky season this year before I was doing that format of wanting one horror book, one sci-fi book, one fantasy book. So I kind of just twisted in sci-fi horror for the month of October. That's why I picked All the Fiends of Hell, which again was great. It was great. So I don't regret it at all. But No One Gets Out Alive is the one that ℙ𝕦𝕣𝕠𝕠𝕜 devotees have been telling me I need to read next. They've been really, really adamant that this was the book they thought was going to land for me. And it's kind of ironic because we will be watching the movie this month for spooky season here at the house. So I'll actually be able to watch the movie before I read the book. But I do think it's the one that I want to go to next because Adam Neville, I bought like a dozen of his books because I just had this feeling he's going to be one of those authors I loved. And then I read Last Days. I was like, uh-oh. But I'll be honest, I'm not really crazy about cult horror stories. Those didn't really work for me. And most of his books seem like they're a lot of folk horror, but this one I think does sound a little more granted. Haunted apartment building is basically all I got out of the synopsis. Moves to a cheap apartment, and then I think you figure out why it was so cheap, because it is haunted. So I love a good ghost story. That's a very easy sell for me. So that's why I went ahead and went with this. But I know you're saying, oh man, the one that I wanted isn't there. I have a few near misses I'm going to talk about real quick. These might work their way into this list. You never know. Some of these things, it's just timing, I think. But I feel like with horror books, is they could fit in a little easier because they're usually about 350 pages. They're small casts. They don't require a lot of brain power, I think, to get into, and you can read them really, really quick. So a couple that I kind of moved down the list here because honestly, I'm trying to get more modern horror authors on there. I don't know if you noticed that. Most of these are people that are still working right now. I'm trying to get more into modern horror authors instead of just always going to the greatest hits, I think. So that's why Ghost Story by Peter Straub kind of went down a notch. I'll Be Straight With You, Talisman, Black House. Those have kind of made me be like, I don't know, because I don't feel like those are the best Stephen King books. I blamed Peter Straub for it, and I know that's wrong, but I will be honest, that's kind of one of the reasons why I thought, I'm just going to kind of push that one down. But again, also with these, I'm trying to push newer, modern, currently working horror authors up on this list. Same with The Rats by James Herbert. That's why The Rats kind of slid down a little bit. High Rise by J.G. Ballard is another one. I feel like that's almost like more dystopian than horror, but I feel like those would go kind of hand in hand or whatever. And a couple of more recent ones that just missed it. Looking Glass Sound by Katrina Ward. Is it Katrina or Catriona? I've been told it's both, so you tell me. But Looking Glass Sound, what chased me off from this one is people talking about how, it just gets so super meta at the end. I don't like that. I don't like that. So you have to be really, really freaking good to get basically like, breaking the fourth wall and talking to me for me to really, really like it. And I don't know if that's exactly, that's just what I've been told. That's how I've been sold on it. But I still am very interested. I've got a really, really nice edition from Broken Binding that I do want to read. So it's definitely not off the list. And last, Gone to See the Riverman. Don't know anything about this one. Christopher Triana. It's just one that got recommended a ton. And that's kind of what I've got on the list for now. So, that's a good 15 here. Again, I'm not going to pretend that something might snake its way in there. You never know when it comes to doing a channel like this. You get so many recommendations and you get FOMO and things like that. So you can never really predict the future on these things. But as of right now, like say I had a queue of, okay, I'm going to knock these 10 books off next. These are the 10 that I'm really looking at within the next calendar year or so. So hopefully by the end of next spooky season, I can say I've read most or all of these. That is kind of the goal going forward. I'd like to get a horror book at least every other month on the channel because I do love the genre. I love discovering all these new authors that you guys have brought to my attention. So guys, are you interested in any of these? Do you have any books that I didn't mention here that you think that I might want to add to the list? I'm always open to recommendations, especially on horror, because it's one of those things where I'll get a billion fantasy recommendations. I don't get a ton of horror recommendations. So I would love to keep adding to that list. If it's someone that's currently working, that's a bonus. It's not only thing I'm going to read. It's just something I'm trying to focus on a little bit because I want to make sure, I want to get that excitement of some of these authors I love and getting to experience them on release day. That's kind of something that I want to make sure I'm starting to angle myself more towards because I do a lot of, these are the classics and you feel like you got to get to those. But I'd like to get some of the newbies out there too because I think it could be quite fun for all of us. So guys, drop in the comments and let me know what you think about these. Let me know any of your recommendations and I will talk to you there.